Evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Town of Ayer Select Board joint meeting of the Ayer Select Board and the Ayer Finance Committee for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. This is a FY26 budget public forum. This meeting/hearing of the Ayer Select Board and Ayer Finance Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with a particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID number 978-772-8220 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220 extension 100 prior to the meeting. Could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd like to call the Finance Committee to order.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Freskowski. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. I would like to call the Finance Committee to order for this joint meeting of the Ayer Select Board and Finance Committee for the FY 2026 Budget Public Forum.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to our town manager for to begin the public presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board, Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity this evening to give a brief presentation on the FY26 budget. Most importantly, an opportunity to answer any questions that the Select Board or the Finance Committee may have on the FY26 budget. And perhaps the most important is to take any public questions or input through you, Mr. Chair, from the public on the budget. I would just like to say before I have a brief presentation, I want to thank Barbara Tierney, the Finance Manager, and Carly Antonellis, the Assistant Town Manager, for all of their work and support on this, as well as Kerry Cooper, the Town Accountant, and our Finance team. All of the town departments are here. The budget is truly a team effort of all town departments, all boards, committees, commissions, volunteers, town meeting, and the residents. And we should all be very proud of the budgets that we put forward because they truly are the budgets of the town. And it's a process that you all work on year-round to make this successful. So a special thanks, and I do appreciate that. So we are going to just housekeeping. We're going to be using draft 3 of the budget, which you all were transmitted on March 7th. You have hard copies tonight. Folks that are participating remotely, draft 3 is available on the budget page on the town's website, and also hard copies of anything related to the budget are available through my office during normal business hours. So we will be using draft 3 for our presentation and discussion tonight. Next slide. So, as many are familiar with, the budget is a process that goes all year round, a cycle. We are right now with the red circle at the public budget forum hearing tonight on March 12th. In terms of next steps, just to highlight, next Tuesday, March 18th, will be the water and sewer and stormwater rate public hearing with the Select Board at 6 p.m. Then the deadline for all warrant articles and citizens petitions is noon on March 28th. On April 1st at 6 p.m., the Select Board FinCom will review the budget and finalize, and the board will approve the warrant on April 1st. The warrant will be publicly posted on April 4th and will be sent to printing and mailing to go to all Ayer households before town meeting. And really mark your calendars, Monday, March 28th will be a town meeting. And at town meeting, as many are familiar, there will be a presentation, a smaller presentation on the budget at town meeting. There are various presentations on numerous articles, including both of the school assessments. So that's where we are in the process. So I like to start with this slide for two reasons. One is a true testament to what I said earlier, to the fiscal health of the town of Ayer. And secondly, that we're entering the budget from a very strong position of strength, which is very unique to Ayer. If you look at a lot of our neighbor communities are struggling with overrides and other issues, the state budget, the federal situation. We are, despite all of that turmoil, in a very strong position. You'll see that our certified free cash was over $3.2 million this year. That was the 8th consecutive year in a row that the town had free cash of over at least $1 million. This was the highest in the time that I've been here at just over $3.2 million. Our stabilization fund has over $4.4 million in it. As the Select Board and FinCom are well aware, that is sort of the stabilization reserves for the town. In order to access those requires a 2/3 vote of a town meeting. We have not had to access any stabilization over the last 15 years, and we continue to build that reserve. The second is the capital stabilization at just over $6 million. Again, we continue to build those reserves for capital projects. You'll see the last Standard & Poor bond rating of the town was a AA2, which is the next to the highest you can get, right, Barbara? It's pretty much the highest you can get. There's one rating above that. That's a true testament by third-party professionals of the town's economy, strong management, good financial policies, and healthy reserves. And that's also key, that bond rating allows Barbara in the town to borrow for projects at an optimal bond rating. So we are in a strong position as we come into the FY26 budget. This is a history of the omnibus budget increases, and that's really what we're talking about tonight, the omnibus budget. Over the last 10 years, you can see the baseline from 2016 and now where we are with draft 3 on 2026. So in a theoretical paradigm, which would be great, the budget would only increase by 2.5% because the tax levy, the maximum it can increases by 2.5%. I would argue it'd be hard pressed to find a budget that falls into that exact theoretical paradigm. Our target, ideally for the budget, would be around 4 to 5%. And you can see that as an increase. You can see that is varied over time, depending on the year. And the average is 5.29%. This year, where we are with draft 3, we're just below 6%, a little higher than we would like to be. However, I want to really stress it's not a reason for alarm. And as I'm going to show you in a moment, there's actually 5 drivers that have driven the budget up this particular year. We're confident that that's not going to be the case moving forward. So the budget is within the sustainability framework for the town, from all of our opinion. I will point out that draft 3, which I'll get to in a second, though that's the final version, we do anticipate there to be some last revisions, and with that, minor revisions, hopefully that will come down a little bit. I don't anticipate any revisions going in the up way, but we're just about there. The budget evolution as of every year. Last year, the FY25 budget was just under 19 million. Draft 1 was sent to the Select Board and FinCom on January 17th. then draft 2 on February 18th, and then draft 3, which we're using tonight, and there will be a final draft that will be on March 28th in the Select Board packet. It'll be sent to the Select Board, the FinCom, and the public. That will be the final going into the April 1st meeting, and we don't anticipate significant changes from that. And why we stress that evolution, as everyone is aware, it's a process. So the Select Board has been publicly meeting throughout the budget process on this. The Finance Committee has been meeting publicly through this reviewing and meeting with departments, as have various boards and committees. So it is a open and transparent process as we move forward. So for FY26, the budget drivers. So these are the significant things that are driving the budget upward. And they change from year to year, and some of them are unexpected, some of them are outside of our control, some of them are to some extent. So there are 5 drivers this year, and the interesting thing is the omnibus budget for FY26 has an increase, a total increase of $1,124,885. Of that increase, over 1.1 million falls in these 5 categories, which leaves about a balance of 92,000 on the other increases. So this is what I wanted to focus on tonight, is the main change, if you will, in the budget, or the main drivers. They are the contractual union and non-union personnel costs and benefits, health insurance, the final integration of the Fire Safer Grant costs for the 4 firefighters, the pension assessment, and overtime impacts due to the hospital closure. Next. So the first one, the union contracts. So there were 3 union contracts that were up this year. This was the big year, meaning the contracts are staggered. This year we have 3. Last year was 2. Next year there'll be only 1. So it was a bigger year in that sense. There are, and I just want to point out for the everyone's benefit, so these contracts are negotiated by the town manager with the negotiation team. We reach an agreement called a memorandum of agreement with the union. I take the memorandum of agreement to the Select Board, which has to review it and ratify it. Once they're reviewed and ratified, the memorandum of agreements become a public document. Then we go to town meeting, which is responsible for authorizing the appropriation. And then after the authorization of the appropriation, we will do up a contract before July 1st. So the memorandum of agreement has all of the terms. They are located on the town website at www.ayer.ma.us/contracts. And I checked before this, and they are all up there. So you'll see the 3, the DPW union contract, the total first year costs $60,725. That contract covers 19 employees. The fire contract, $104,208. Police superiors, which are the sergeants, $37,458, for a total impact to the budget of $202,391. There'll also be a brief presentation at town meeting on each of these, because by law, town meeting has to vote the appropriation by article for each of those. So that is one of the budget drivers. No, that's good. The second one are our non-union personnel. We have several non-union personnel that have personnel service contracts. This, and we will be working on this moving forward. I've talked with Barbara about this. The majority of them seem to hit in this 3rd year, and we're looking moving forward to stagger some of these. We are also in the process of doing a non-union compensation study and analysis with the Collins Center from UMass. When that's completed, we'll be coming to the Select Board and the FinCom with recommendations from that. We just started that process, so that'll be later in the year. So there were 11 contracts that were up. If you take all of those costs from each of those MOAs, which are online, the total impact is $76,575. Next. The third driver is health insurance. Our health insurance unfortunately increased by 14.8% or $336,248 over last year. I say unfortunately because, well, the good news is we budgeted for 15%, so we just came in under. But our target, our hope was that it would have been 10%. However, as I've mentioned, usually it comes in at 10%. We switched health insurance providers because we had to. The Minuteman Neshoba Health Group was in difficulty, and it actually has dissolved since then, and we went to Maya. If we had stayed with Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, if it had continued to exist, the increases would have been closer to 20% from what we've talked to folks with. The cost drivers from this, the benefits payroll manager, finance manager, myself have met several times with the town's insurer. Overall national and statewide increases in healthcare costs, increase in prescription costs, the Federal Inflation Reduction Act of 2024 restructured Medicaid, which is not a bad thing, but the costs that were taken off of the Medicaid recipients, which is not a bad thing, got shifted to insurance, which then got passed through to everybody down the pike, as they say. And the post-COVID surge in medical appointments and services since the end of the pandemic has ramped up. So the good news is we came in under our target, and we can withstand this. The other good news is we anticipate for FY27 we'll be back closer to the 10% range because of claims history and mostly claims history. But this was an unforeseen driver on the budget. Next. So the SAFER grant, just briefly, and I know both the fire chief and the deputy chief are here after if there are any questions. But as the Select Board FinCom is aware, with the SAFER grant, we had an opportunity to fund 4 firefighters with a federal grant for 3 years. At the end of that 3 years, the positions get integrated into the budget. We have been proactive in the sense, Barbara and the chief and others, to begin to that integration so it wouldn't hit all at one time. This is the last year. So the last year, there's a $220,000 increase, which is the last piece of that integration of the grant into the budget. The good news is that for FY27, that won't be a new cost driver there. I do want to just add, and I appreciate the support of the Select Board and the Finance Committee and the town on the SAFER grant for the 4 firefighters. They always say hindsight's 20/20. If we hadn't gotten these 4 firefighters and we had no way of knowing that the hospital was going to close, when the hospital closed back in August, we would have been in a position where the chief and I and others, and we'd be coming to town meeting to look probably to hire more firefighters that would have come directly out of the budget. It happened in Groton in September. They had to hire 2 firefighters using free cash just to meet the impacts from the hospital closure. So the positive thing is we are fully staffed in a safe manner at federal level, and we've almost, we'll complete the integration of the grant. The pension assessment. So the Middlesex County Retirement System, all of our employees belong to and pay into. And each year in the budget, there's an annual amount that the town pays, which is the town's portion for our employees. That is normally a standard item. We also forward fund the pension, something we started around 5 years ago, where each year town meeting has put $300,000 from free cash towards forward funding the pension. And we do that for savings and to reduce costs. As I put here, what happened is there's an 11% increase this year, or a $247,000 increase in the pension assessment. And why that is the pension assessment, they do a biannual analysis, the retirement system every 2 years for all member towns, including Ayer, does an analysis to determine what your assessment is going to be. In the yellow box, the 2 major factors are the number of positions and the salary and wages of the positions since the last assessment. As you'll see in the blue box, since our last assessment, the town did add 7 positions. The 4 firefighters from the SAFER grant, the water and sewer superintendent, the town social worker position, and the assistant building inspector. And that's a considerable, over the last 2 years, addition to our organization, a positive on municipal service to the town, but that is what drove that impact. The increase in the budget would probably have been another 5 to 7% higher if we hadn't been forward funding the pension. As I mentioned there, the increase instead of 11% probably would have been closer to 16 or 17%. The encouraging news is the new assessments being done. There are no, there's only 1 new position. There's not anticipation for other new positions, so that should come back into line for next year. The last budget driver are impacts due to the hospital closure, and there are multiple impacts to the hospital closure, so I just want to be clear, we're talking about what we know right now for impacts to the municipal budget from the hospital. We have increased the overtime line in the fire budget by $50,000 to be proactive due to increased stress on the EMS system and on the air fire system. As you know, and they continue to do a great job, so it's not them, it's because when the hospital closed on August 31st, immediately they had to travel longer and further, whether to Leominster or to Emerson primarily. There are increased costs with that in terms of personnel, in terms of overtime. It also raises concerns about fire coverage. So the chief did a lot of work on this, and with Barbara, this is their best estimate of the cost impact for the year ahead. They continue to collect data, so it's somewhat unknown frontier, but through a lot of work, it was determined that $50,000 seemed like a responsible and proactive amount at this time to put into the overtime. I want to just also point out, I know that the select board is aware that all of the chiefs of the Neshoba Valley currently have submitted a proposal to the state requesting $9.1 million over the next 2 fiscal years, not just for air, but for all of the towns to try to shore up the stresses and the costs that we're seeing on the EMS system. So there is further efforts underway to try to resolve this. But $50,000, we believe, on all the information we have now, is a strong number. Hopefully we won't need all of it, but we'll know more in a year. So that concludes, again, the 5 major drivers. Then just briefly want to just point out, we use this slide quite often with the 2 pie graphs here. On the left, or my left, under wages, it breaks down the wages by department. So you can see that about 60% are police and fire, Department of Public Works about 12.7%, Culture and Recreation 6.8%, Human Services 2.4%, and then General Government 18% of the breakdown. And then on the other side, the expenses, because municipal government, think of it as a service industry. We provide key municipal services. The principal vehicle to deliver those services are qualified personnel. And so compensation, as you can see, your wages makes up 50% of the expenses in the budget. The benefits, another 28%. So 78% of the budget is personnel. And then debt is about 5.6%. And then other expenses, materials, et cetera, 16%. Okay. Then just real briefly, and almost done, the recommended uses of free cash. So Ayer is fortunate, as I mentioned, we have this fortunate decision every year to make as to what to do with the free cash. So the free cash is subject to appropriation by town meeting. And I met with the Finance Committee on February 11th, and Barbara and I met with them, February 11th, and then with the select board on February 18th. And this is what was proposed that we will use the free cash for. So this is all subject to town meeting. Each of these will be an article at town meeting. So the first one is per town policy. We've been putting $300,000 each year into the town's post-employment benefits. We use the meals tax that we collect for that and the balance from the free cash to get to the $300,000. That's per the financial policies. The forward funding of the pension I mentioned, the $300,000. Compensated absences, that's an account, that's a fund in which you can use to, if there are separation from service, unforeseen retirement and so forth, we can pay for those costs out of this fund rather than having it hit the departmental budget, which could create a reserve fund situation or so forth. The balance should be around $75,000 in that fund. It's about $65,000. Now we feel that $10,000 would keep us on point there. The UDAG replenishment, there's only one project outstanding, and per the policy, when the select board authorizes something to be paid from UDAG, it's subject to replenishment at a future town meeting. The $65,000 represents a time-sensitive, it was a chemical skid project for the water department, and needed to get that in place mid-budget year. We appreciate the select board authorized that. We'll replenish that at town meeting, and then the UDAG will be completely, there'll be nothing outstanding. And then the last two big ones, capital stabilization, putting the lion's share of $2 million in there as we continue to build capital stabilization, and stabilization fund, $761,808. And that totals the free cash. Next. All right. So next steps, as mentioned, Friday, March 28th at noon, the warrant will close per the select board. That's also the deadline at noon to the town clerk for any citizens' petitions. Tuesday, April 1st, the select board will approve the warrant, FinCom to make recommendations on financial articles. So on the 28th in the board packet, and for the public, it's online, will be the final version of the budget and the warrant. And then once approved on Friday, April 4th, the warrant will be publicly posted, which includes the town website. We send it to print, and it's mailed to all Ayer households in advance of town meeting. Town meeting is on the 28th in the high school auditorium. And then I also want to point out that Tuesday, May 13th is the annual town election. And really between April 1st and April 28th, the town will be doing, as we always do, a lot of outreach, the articles of the day, talking about each article. FinCom will be meeting, Select Board will be meeting, and we'll continue to get the information out there. And last, I think I have one last slide, right? Just want to stress again, the FY26 budget page is on the town's website, or ayer.ma.us/budget. You go there, this is just a screenshot of it. You can find all 3 drafts of the budget. You see all the capital requests. All the information is there. If there is something that isn't there, let us know. Or if there's something you have a question about or want further information, as it says, please contact us. The most important thing is we want everybody to have all of the information so they can make an informed decision at town meeting. And so, Mr. Chair, with that concludes the presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions or comments from the Select Board and FinCom, and then public input through you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Just a moment.
Okay. From the FinCom, any questions? Cool. No? Any public input questions? Pauline?
Good evening, and thank you for taking this question. And I'll be really brief. Robert answered at 99% of my questions this evening, so I thank you for that. Um, I'd like to make a comment about the fire department budget for FY '26. I believe the number is $50,000 in the event that we need that to cover overtime. Might I suggest, and I appreciate Tim Johnson, I'm sure he's asking for what he thinks he needs, but there's no harm in asking for more because we can always encumber it or return it to stabilization or whatever. We've got enough in free cash. I'd much rather make sure our firefighters, EMTs, and dispatchers are paid without having to come back and seek additional funding. I'd just like y'all to think about that a little bit because
Sure.
I don't know that a decision has to be made tonight. But
Mhm.
even doubling it, we have $3 million.
Mhm.
All right. So I would really like to see that number changed, increased, doubled. And the other point I'd like to make, this is the operating budget for the town, has nothing to do with all the borrowing we're going to be asked to do at town meeting. Will you all be having a meeting to present that to the public?
This is Pauline, this is Robert, Pauline, sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pauline, it's Robert, through the chair. We weren't, we can definitely look at talking about capital further in some venue. We didn't plan, for tonight, but we can talk about that. The other thing, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, Pauline, some time ago, you had brought it up. I've talked with Barbara on the large borrowing in the budget book or in the appropriate instrument. We're putting that together. We're going to show the cost impact of the borrow on the taxpayer, so that added level of detail. But we can definitely look at something on capital.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. And I saw that in a memo
Mm-hmm.
regarding the senior center, but there are several other borrowing questions. And I think if the two boards could have one meeting, maybe not public, a public hearing type thing, but at least a meeting so that everybody understands what they're going to see at town meeting with respect to borrowing. Because the operating budget and the borrowing, as we all know, are worlds apart. And it's the borrowing that impacts our tax rate, or not tax rate, but taxes.
Mhm.
So I would just like to make that suggestion to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good presentation tonight, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pauline.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or public input?
Doesn't seem to be.
No? Okay.
All right. Thank you again. We really appreciate your support and your attention tonight and hosting this important forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Kurt, if you want to adjourn from the finance committee.
I'm making a motion that we adjourn the finance committee section of this meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Finance committee is adjourned.
All right, I'll take a motion for the select board.
I'll make a motion that the select board adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And we are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.